bude aj záznam a že to budeme môcť dielať a hlavne takto aj v digitálnej podobe. Takže, meine Damen und Herren, willkommen auf dem Konzert Akusmatik Musik von Professor Július Fujak von Nitra, Slowakei. Und ich sage natürlich nur kurz über Professor. Professor hat heute gehabt einen Vortrag, sehr interessant, über Alternativmusikszene in Slowakei, durch Geschichte natürlich, aber auch jetzt im Präsent. So, das war sehr interessant Vortrag und wir haben viele Lieder gehört. Und natürlich heute und jetzt wird auch Professor gespielt oder wie wir gehört, diese Lieds oder diese Pieces, welcher Autor ist natürlich Professor Fujak. Professor Fujak ist nicht nur Wissenschaftler von Semiotik und natürlich über Alternativmusik, Kulturwissenschaftler, aber er ist auch natürlich Kompositor und natürlich er ist Künstler und natürlich er macht Musik selbst. Und das ist natürlich, seine Musik ist, viele Kritik sagen, natürlich, das ist experimental elektronische Musik, konzeptual und Minimalistik. Und ich habe gelesen, dann ein Autor oder Kritik weil Professor hat jetzt, pred mesiacom však ste tak vydali ten album, alebo pred takými dvomi.
No, on vyšiel na prelome rokov 2022-2023. Ale reálne vyšiel teraz na koncom jary, na začiatku jary.
So, auf dem diese letzte Tag im Frühling, das war neue Album. Und natürlich, das ist neue Album ist Transparent Sculptures. Und dieses Album, ich habe Rezension gelesen, dass Professor, ich sage das in Englisch, er ist ein Pionier auf der Slowak Experimentalmusik. Natürlich, das haben ein bisschen diese Konnotation anderes, aber er ist wirklich eine von diesen, natürlich von Wissenschaftler Teil, aber auch natürlich in Praxis. Und ich nur sagen, dann er hat viele Kooperationen mit Künstlern von Slowakei, Tschechien, aber auch durch ganz Europa und Welt, zum Beispiel von Amerika. Und natürlich, Professor hat viele organisieren, viele Künstlerprojekte, Alternativprojekte und er hat natürlich einladen, viele Künstler zu spielen und wir werden heute natürlich gehören diese Lied oder diese Performance. Und natürlich, Professor sagt, was ist dieser Typ von dieser akusmatischen Musik? Professor hat schon das gesagt. Und er wird natürlich über jede dieser Lied oder dieses Stück oder Performance etwas sagen. So, Professor, ich denke, das ist, und ich nur muss sagen, dann Professor kommt aus Universität Konstantin Philosopher in Nitra und jetzt arbeiten wir Wissenschaftler und Professor. Das ist großer Name, aber ich sage, das ist Sektion für Kulturwissenschaft, aber Grund ist Semiotik. So. Dankeschön. Dankeschön. Ich war probieren in Deutsch zu sagen und ich hoffe, das klappt. Takže ďakujem veľmi pekne, ich sagen dann danke, dann wir haben diese Möglichkeit, nur ein Sätze, Professor tut leid, dann er ist nicht live hier, aber wir haben diese Möglichkeit online, aber Professor ist immer herzlich willkommen, das ich habe nicht gesagt, auf dem durch Vortrag. So, ich hoffe, dann wir sehen auch Professor live, nicht nur durch Kamera. So, vielen Dank, dass Sie gekommen. Professor,
thank you for introduction. Samuel, I appreciate it. First of all, I apologize I could not be with you in presence, because of some healthy complications. So I'm very thankful that I can make this presentation of my music, mostly acousmatic music, in the online streaming version. Well, so I can go in media res. Just tell me if you can see my screen by now in this version. I mean, if you can see the screen with the title. Is it okay?
We can see. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The room is mine. Okay. So the title of this evening I wrote in this way: the story of the tune and the transparent sculptures. And the reason is next. The reason why. I must say that beginning, I was as a boy. I was musician. I came from old Slovak traditional music family, Fujak family. My father, grandfather, grandfather, etc., were folk musicians. So no wonder that I was educated as a musician. And even my father, who died last year, wrote a wonderful book about the musicianship of the story, the history of our family. And I was influenced also by big beat rock groups like Big Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Deep Purple. But then I was educated by my musical teacher, Arpad Holman was his name. Unfortunately, he died also just a few days before. And I would like to dedicate this presentation of concert of cosmetic music to his memory. And that period, I was occupied not only by rock music, but let's say fusion, jazz rock. It's not a very correct term but in Slovakia and Czechoslovakia we use it. Jazz rock, it's fusion. The group like Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report, Return to Forever of Chick Corea. So no wonder that I was influenced and I was trying to play this kind of music, and as well as the progressive art groups in Slovakia, especially Collegium Musicum of Marian Varga. But to demonstrate how I wanted to play and what was my image to create music was, for example, this tune. It was called that time Kocina now, and I was 13 or maybe 14 when I composed and played this kind of music. Etc., etc. So this was my direction in a very young age. Then I was confronted with the underground and alternative music. So no wonder that I became the member of alternative rock group called Teoria Odrazu, which was one of the representative of Slovak alternative scene in the late 80s and 90s. I mentioned not only by now, but in my lecture, the name of Marian Varga. He was one of the main figure of progressive art music. He was composer and great keyboard player on Hammond organ, piano, etc. And I had a very good luck that in 2001 we have a pair of concerts, and I had also played with him in a duo. He played a synthesizer, I played piano, and the result sounds like this. And you can hear directly from the concert the record on YouTube. Well, maybe you noticed that in the very end, the Marian Varga on the synthesizer played, let's say, a folk tune. It's a really folk tune called Yellow Lily, Žltá Lalia. And on this folk tune was based the whole piece. But in that concert, Marian Varga played also some quotation of Bela Bartok or Dmitri Shostakovich. So I decided many years after to arrange a new version of this piece for acoustic quintet, and you can see the premiere, the image of the premiere in the big church of František Saversky in Skalica. It's the birth town of Marian Varga, and it was very first year, 2018, after his death in 2017, and it was dedicated to him. So I can play for you how it sounds, this similar piece. As you can hear, I arranged for my acoustic quintet. I have to say that there was one of the musicians, a singer and a quinton player, Gabriela Vermeju, Jana Ambrozova violin, Jan Kavan cello, and Andrej Pleštinský on accordion. This introduction combine this tune of Bartók and folk tune. I wish to play for you the very end from the concert. Example of the music of Marian Varga and the piece we played together. To be honest, I must admit that all these pieces I was originally planned for, I will play live for you on the piano, but now it offers me the possibility to present it for you in original version as it sounds that time when it was created. So then I decided to create a composition dedicated Marian Varga, and it was premiered actually just in the 2002 on another concert with Marian Varga with my trio Jan Kavan and DJ Ferro. What you can see as a fine art is there's a pieces or fine art is in the backside. You can see the big photography of Notre Dame before it was burned, from Notre Dame in the beginning of 21st century. And this is the another paintings which is called Heart H2O. What does it mean? In the same meaning like here in Slovakia, Ranená voda, heart or water. But I was inspired some in the beginning with the medieval melody, Nobilis Humoris from England, medieval ages, and I used this the movement of the interval in the very beginning. The Nobilis Humoris sounds like this way. Sorry, So, and now I can play for you my piece, homage to Marian Varga, Hard Water. It's interesting that, except the inspiration of this medieval tune, I create the main chords which are built on the letters of his name, Marian Varga. So it sounds this way. The author of the cello part is Jan Kavan. Now I will play something what I created in parallel space or universe, because I was occupied also by unconventional experimental music in a conceptual frame, and this piece is called Hippolophony. Hippolophony is a piece which is inspired. Can you hear me clearly, Samuel? And the music I perform is okay, is not disturbed? It sounds good? Perfect. So this piece is a not accidental title. It was commissioned by, in my opinion, one of the most interesting artists and philosopher of postmodern art, Josef Čereš. And he has a wonderful festival of intermedia non-conventional art and music called Sound Off in 2002, dedicated to typewriter, old typewriter, the mechanical machine for writing the words, typewriter. Typewriting, and the title of the festival was Typewriter Allowed, Typox Allowed. It means that it refers to Roland Barthes theory, to the writings allowed. Writings allowed, postmodern idea that the writings or grammatology system, as Jacques Derrida wrote, is not connected only with the writings and the words as we can see, but also we can hear it in a metaphorical way, let's say, not only. So I was inspired with Roland Barthes, because Roland Barthes said one time that hiphos, the old ancient Greek word, means text, something what is woven, like text I addressed already, or you have something on you which is woven from some material. And he suggests that the theory of text can be renamed to hiphology. Hiphos, hiphology. So I was inspired by this idea. I called my piece Hipholophony, because I played on the on the typewriter, these letters H, epsilon, phi, H, O, L, phi, H, etc. in this composition, and whisper as well. And it was overloaded with some live recordings on my group theory of the reflection, Teoria odrazu, in 2003, but 2002, excuse me. And inside there's also the same tune you can heard before, but it was played on the both bass guitar, electric bass guitar. And again, I can play it for you this way. Let's start this in the beginning. Typewriter. Just two notes to this composition. In the very beginning, maybe you heard from a vinyl record very loud Russian voice in Russian language. Maybe you noticed, maybe not. It was very slowly record of the wife of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, Nadezhda Krupska, from original record from the 20s. So what you heard was women voice of Lenin's wife, Krupska, very slowing down. And the second note, maybe Samuel, you know where is old puppet theater in Nitra. Maybe you visit sometimes. So on the third floor, there's a theatrical bar, club. And this is the very old advertising from a Prague shop for typewriter, which was behind the bar many years. So this is the picture from Nitra Theatre. That's one thing. So now let's turn to the theme of transparent sculptures. because maybe it's understandable for you that I was talking about some tune, about how they transform, and in the very end I will notion this tune again, but in the different context, how it's important in my musical story. In next year, in the very next year, since the beginning of 21st century, I met with the ideas of John Cage, of Marcel Duchamp, of course, also in the late of 20th century, but it was I was more deeply interested in it. Marcel Duchamp, as you can know, is a great inventor of conceptual art, and somebody say that it in 1912 and somebody in 1913 was written his conceptual piece of art called Sculpture Musicale. On piece paper he just wrote one sentence, translated in English it means musical sculpture, sounds lasting and living from different places and points, forming and sounding sculpture that last. It means that anywhere you are, even in your room or outside in my space, we are surrounded with the sounds which appears and disappears, and they create he called musical sculpture or musical sonic sculpture, which still lasts, which is there. What is a very interesting idea, which understood the idea of music not only in temporal, but primarily in space context, but it's not focused on the tones, but on the sounds, on sonic environment. And I must admit that more and more, year by year, I was more occupied how to incorporate the sonic environment in my project, the sonic pieces. And that was the reason that I use it in various happenings, various performances. And really, it's accidentally just a few hours before this presentation, after my lecture today, I found on the internet in our group cross-European network of sonic ecology. I mentioned it during my lecture that Zsolt Sörös, wonderful sound artist, musician, I cooperate also with him, published this article from BBC Future Planet by Catherine Latham. I hope it's possible for you to read it. Yeah. Some also tell me if you can see what I can see. I mean my screen and this article. Is it possible? Okay, so let's turn to the beginning. Beyond human hearing, a cacophony of natural clicks, whistles, and hums pass all around us, linking billions of living beings in networks of sounds. And now here are the examples. Mother whales whisper to their young, so predators can't hear them. Bees emit unique buzzing signals to distinguish threats from specific predators. Turtle embryos synchronize their collective movement of the birth by making sounds through their shells. And unknown finch species buzz to one another in the depths. Their very identities, one of nature's countless sonic mysteries. But sadly, this sonic biodiversity, evolved over millions of years, is in decline. In the oceans, singing the whales and vocalized fish population are dwindling fast, insect and birds' calls are drowned, etc. Maybe you know that many species on the earth are disappearing in our era. And it's changing also in the sonic environment of our planet. And I think the sonic environment we are living in is kind of mirror. It's kind of mirror showing us what we are and what we are doing and where we are in the position. It means that, for example, especially in the cities or in our flats, we are surrounded with constant permanent noises, and it's called acoustic smoke. It means not only smoke from the cars and everything in the air, but acoustic. We know the term visual smoke in the big cities, but this has something to do with acoustic smoke. And this article, or this is connected also how to bring back the nature, even thanks to sonic experiments, sonic field recordings. And that's for me a very interesting idea, that the sonic ecology is not just a term of ecology in general, but it's a cultural studies theme par excellence. It means what sonic environment you are surrounded, it influenced you, and is in the same time the mirror, the way of our livings, of our civilizations. Yes, in Nitra, in Cologne, in Köln, in Budapest, London, but compared to this, in a forest. Why do we feel so good in forest? Because the sounds surrounding us is not acoustic smoke. Is not something what disturbed us. And so I create some pieces which are in my new project, Transparent Sculptures, focus on the theme how to create mutated hybridization, symbiosis of music and the sonic environment. One of the pieces I would like to present for you is inspired by great Slovakian intermedia artist Milan Adamčiak, and this is his graphic score for a symphonic orchestra called La Mer. It's an implicit homage to Claude Debussy. Unfortunately, till this day, no symphonic orchestra played this piece, and just a couple of chamber experimental ensembles like Veni Ensemble or my trio Nebodaj with guest. So I decided to create my piece inspired by this idea, but not only inspired by the graphical score, but to involve there some sonic environment of the sea. Before I will play this piece for you, I have to mention that except my music created with ensemble Hypnosis Plus, important thematically organic component of both parts of this piece, and I will play the first one, part the night, the sea in night, is formed used by subtle field and hydrophone recordings of the Adriatic Sea near the island Korčula, made by a remarkable personality of contemporary sound art, Manja Ristic from Serbia. She provided me some recordings from her project 11 Days from 2020. She gave them to me selflessly, and thanks to them I could make my dream come true to incorporate the musical and sonic sea currents and waves. She offered me recordings from the place in the island Korčula in Glogovac, old quarry terrace, open sea towards Lastovo. It's above the sea, and in the same place under sea in that cave. So I would like to play for you La Mer with using of field recordings on Manja Ristic with her permissions. So I forgot to tell you that the right channel is the recordings of the sea under sea cave, and the left channel is under sea. It's above the sea. Well, this piece is almost 10 minutes long, and every second minutes you could hear this dynamic big tsunami wave. Tsunami, I mean acoustic tsunami, which sounds with not only these field recordings, but with these lines for instruments, different kind of instruments you can hear, and I coordinate these movements. Another piece from this project, Transparent Sculptures, maybe I didn't explain quite clearly why transparent sculptures. It comes from the Marcel Duchamp idea of musical sculpture, but transparent or transparent because it's not visible. The music sounds as a sculpture and it's not visible. Even Frank Zappa, I think quite noble American composer, said one time that music in performance is the type of sculpture. The air in the performance is sculpted in something. So that's the idea why I present you, and I will this project as a transparent sculptures in this context. Another example of let's say incorporate sounds of environment in music is connected with another great figure of conceptual art in Slovak history. His name is Julius Koller, and I took his it's not drawing, it's a kind of map. It's a map of a game or sonic walk. In 1970, he created this Pop UFO, but the whole title of this piece, as you can see, is written here, is Psychophysical Occupation of the Space by Universal Fantastic Object. And this is different places in park in Piešťany. Piešťany is a born town of Julius Koller, and he invited two people to listen different unidentified sonic object to the situations. So it was kind of happening. And in 2021, curator Daniel Gruň invited me to make something for the opening of the exhibitions. So I create with him, let's say, sonic walk, and we really went to this map again and recording from his birth house to the playground, fountain, let's say to table tennis place, amphitheater, lamp, musical pavilion, and make a short musical postcard, sonic postcard, what happened there. And this sonic postcard I used in my composition, and I can play you the sample of the first place from the birdhouse. And as you can see, I have a tape recording machine, just walking on the stairs, wooden stairs in the house where Julius Koller was born. And it sounds the symbiosis of the recording sounds and the music of I improvised with my group pianos is plus this way.
Rodný dom.
Juliusa Kollera, 16. september 2021.
One more time, please. One more time.
Juliusa Kollera, 16. september 2021.
Well, so I'm approaching to the end of my presentation with the piece called "Water for Purgatory," which is dedicated to our friend. It's not accidental I said our, because Michal Reiser was my PhD student and a good friend of Samuel Koruniak here in Nitra. He died, unfortunately, in his 33 years last year. He was one of the best students I ever know during my career, more than 25 years at this faculty. He was occupied with many important issues, like the understanding of suicide in the cases if it's or not decision of free will or not. He called about the will to die, not only in a way of sacrificing, but as a inside free decision to end your life with some reasoning, which is certain meanings. And also he occupied, I can show you the second of his books, which is called Cyber Zombie. I hope it's possible to hear, so see. Samuel, is possible to see the cover? No?
Not clearly. Cover is, but not to read, but it's okay.
Okay, but I can show you just the cover. I can read it. It's called Cyber Zombie, with subtitle Metamorphosis of Digital Citizens. And very important books is actually his PhD thesis published in 2018. He was friend. He was somebody I missed a lot, and he died by cancer. And immediately when I finished this piece, Water for Purgatory, I realized, and they told me that Michal died. So I decided to dedicate it in memoriam, this piece to him. And he has special structure. Maybe you remember in the very beginning when I played for you the piece called Heart Water, Heart HO2, dedicated to Marian Varga. I also mentioned this medieval English tune, Nobilis Humilis, singing in Latin, obviously. And I decided to use this tune, but in different way. I cut it, and I cut it in many pieces, in fragments, and I slowed it down in a big measure, and use special kind of plugin. And what you will hear is in original electric piano, but my intention was to play like virtual symphonic electronic orchestra. And the sonic environment is not something I live it in, but it's taken from the concert of David Kolar and TJ Vuga. TJ Vuga is my alter ego, my pseudonym. And there was very little sound, very silent sounds of the concert hall. So there are many layers, and I add some music of viola, of flute, and the result you can hear in a few seconds. So this is another example of transparent sculpture, which sounds quite differently. And I have special relationship to this piece because of Michal Reiser. So if I can finish this meeting, it's almost 10 minutes, but I think we have enough time to listen it all since the beginning till the end. One more time. Water for purgatory, for him is water to heaven. Well, in the very end of my presentation, I can say that this graphics of the album was made by the Simona Vranikova, who prepared also the PR material for my lecture and this concert acoustic music. And these hands are her hands, but they are inspired by Raphael fresco. Athens school. Maybe you know it's a big fresco in Vatican where this is the gesture of philosophers. So, for example, this is the gesture of Plato, and this is the gesture of Aristotle from this big fresco Athens school. Yes, and another philosopher. And so I would like to say that the whole project, this album, as you can see, exists even in a real, not only virtual way, with a special limited version of a booklet, which consists many material, many text explanations, etc. Maybe you notice that there's a homage to Marian Varga, to Milan Adamczyk, the person I met, I cooperate with, to Julius Koller. And as I dedicated this piece to Michal Reiser, the whole album I was dedicated to my father, who died in October last year. And maybe you noticed that I dedicated this my speech and this evening to my piano teacher, Arpad Holman, who died just last week. So what to say next? Just Dankeschön, and thanks a lot for your listening. So, any comments, any questions?
Thank you very much, oder Dankeschön, Professor, das war sehr schön. Dann wir haben, sorry, I'm speaking now.
It's okay.
Dann wir haben ganz diese, wir können sagen, die letzte Produktion für Professor oder Professor Project. Professor, when I was reading this, some kind of the recension or comments about this album or your interviews, maybe I get wrong, but this project is also this last project, this last album is something which is all of your work last 20 years, or I maybe get it wrong from this commentar, or it's just some kind of new project. Sorry.
No, there are used. I used this field recordings from maybe last 5 years of different occasions. But some music is recorded just in 2021, some in 2022. And also, it's not accidental that I use such a term, sonic postcard. And it has something to do with understanding of Roland Barthes from his very last book, Lucida Camera, where he wrote that every photograph has two dimensions, studium and punctum. Studium is what you can see. You can say what is there from cultural point of view, what things there are, something that you understand some historical context. If it's family, it's a picture from war, etc. But punctum is the aspect of photography you cannot verbalize, but it's something what can catch your attention, which has special value for you, and you cannot say why. Roland Barthes said that when his mother died, he could not find any image, any picture, photography of her, which would express the essence of her. And then he appeared the picture of her mother when she was just 8 years old girl. And this is her. This was her. Something what he could not verbalize, but there was some essence. And this punctum, I think, this punctum aspect of photography, we can apply to fine art, we can apply it even to the music, especially to the sonic postcard of certain situation. Because if we record something what is looks or sounds in a very banal daily situation, but when you can hear it, especially with some time distance after a year, then you notice that it's something very special. This kind of punctum aspect, which cannot be verbalized, but sometimes we can say, I can continue just with the last example. When I hear Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin, I can analyze what the people are playing there. Musicians are singing and playing. But why this music is so special, in the very, very end, I cannot catch, despite of analyze, theoretical, aesthetical, semiotical, there's some punctum, as Roland Barthes says. Yes. So that's the reason why time to time I record special events, special occasions, special daily events, and I can incorporate to show the valuable suchness of this sonic environment, in the meaning that they are kind of a mirror for us.
Thank you. Do you have any comments or some kind of Kommentar on this production from Professor? Oder haben Sie etwas Kommentar oder etwas zu fragen oder etwas zu...
Ich würde gerne noch etwas fragen.
Ja, Frau Laus, Sie können kommen. Oder Sie können kommen und ich kann übersetzen vielleicht.
Ja, also mich würde interessieren, wie die Anfänge dieser alternativen Musikszene in der Slowakei waren. Hat es irgendwelche Beziehungen gegeben zu Westeuropa? Also hier in Deutschland gab es ja, gerade auch in Köln, das elektronische Studio und das Radio spielte eine große Rolle. Und dann gab es ja in Donaueschingen die Musiktage und in Darmstadt diese Ferienkurse. Gab es da irgendwelche Connections?
There is a question. What was the beginning of the, for example, alternative music in 50er oder 60er? That Sie haben, that you probably said it also probably on the lecture, and did this alternative music also is also dedicated to the West alternative music. For example, in Deutschland gibt es
in Germany there was in Cologne there was the electronic studio, and
I know very well.
They played a big role. And there was Donaueschingen, and you spoke about Darmstadt.
Heimart, Stockhausen, etc. I know. I know very well. So if I can answer, may I answer?
Yes.
The beginning of this kind of culture, and I'm very thankful, and in the same time very sorry I cannot be in Köln because of this great history of electroacoustic, that time electronic music. It's at the beginning, we can say in the late 50s or the beginning of 60s, with so-called Slovak avant-garde generation. In the lecture, I played the music of Roman Berger, and together with Ilya Zelienka and other young composers, there was the beginning of new avant-garde approaches in our Slovak history. So it was maybe, let's say, one decade or decade 12 years later compared to Germany. But it's comprehensible because in the 50s it was hard communistic, social realistic pressure. So this young generation, that time, in the break of 50s and 60s, started to make even the experiments of electroacoustic music. And in 1965 was founded experimental electroacoustic studio in Slovak radio. And in the year in 1968, 69 and 70, there were, we call this the Slovakian Darmstadt courses in Smolenice, and except those composers I mentioned, for example, Ladislav Kupkovic, who left Slovakia after August 68 to Germany, by the way, there was very special semiotician and theoretician Peter Faltin, who also emigrate from socialistic Czechoslovakia because of the army, Soviet army and Warsaw army, who came to the Czechoslovakia in the August 68, and there was the founders of these Slovakian courses. So I can say that even Milan Adamczyk, I mentioned, he presented his pieces on the Slovakian Darmstadt courses in Smolenice.
Ďakujeme, thank you very much. Do we have more comments or question oder Fragen auf dem vielleicht Produktion von oder diese Arbeit von Professor oder was wir haben gehört? Natürlich, oder? Okay, noch.
Nee, wenn das noch, weil das ist noch ganz anders. Also,
Yes, you can, of course.
My question concerns the production of your music. Are there any notations, or do you improvise, or are these pieces repeated in another way, in concerts perhaps?
Thanks for these remarks, comments. It depends. If I work with the musicians which can read notes very well, I combined, let's say, some score parts with the improvising. It depends. I call that this is the era of compromising music, comprovisations, because comprovisation. Hello, very nice to see you, not only hear you. That if you have a big orchestra you can work with and write for them. Like said, Stockhausen, Boulez has the era where Stockhausen could write even for 3 big orchestra. Pierre Boulez can write pieces for also big ensembles, and it takes some money. And as I said in a lecture, I quoted Edgar Varese, that he said in 30s that a contemporary composer refused to die. And today, if you are composed experimental music, it's not so easy to cooperate with some special kind of ensemble. For example, the very last piece I played for you, Water for Purgatory, was originally dedicated for Quasar's ensemble, but they have no time during the Corona crisis to record it. So some of my scores are written. Some of our scores are inspired by the graphic scores and notation, like graphic fine art, which should be audialization of some visual arts. And what I love also to play with the great musicians, which are also composer, it's very good experience when I can conduct and coordinate collective improvisation according my science and according my image of the composing in that moment. So it's very, very special adventure when you create and combine all this approach in one piece.
Thank you.
Danke.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Michael, hast du Fragen? Natürlich, okay, so. Jetzt ich auch gehe ein bisschen weiter mit Kamera. Ja.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, I mean it's really impressive. I also wanted to ask how these signs are to interpret. Because my question was, you already answered that more or less, but maybe to be a little bit more specific. So it's basically if you or someone else plays these pieces who are written down in signs which are not musical signs in a strict sense. So how does it usually work? Is it every time a reinterpretation, and how much do they differ? That's maybe one short question.
Okay, I can begin with a very simple answer that if you are successful, then you have many occasions to present your music and to cooperate with the different ensemble, or the ensemble want to cooperate with you. If you are not very successful, you have to have your own ensemble. It's a case of Frank Zappa. It was case of Phil Glass at the beginning. All of these composers should have their groups or their ensemble who knows how to interpret the composer's ideas. Just a few days before, I think it was not the last, but I think in the May 14th, died one of the greatest Slovakian woman composer, Věra Janarčeková. He lived, by the way, in Germany. The Slovak composer, he died in her 83 years old, but she was deeply connected with the Quasars ensemble who interpreted the pieces very correctly, because her notation has a very different kind of special signs, and it means that if you cooperate with this kind of ensemble, as Věra Janarčeková had a chance to cooperate with such a special kind of ensemble, it's a kind of model for other interpretation. That's the reason why these performances are recorded. So if you offer this experimental kind of scores to other ensembles, they can listen these recordings and compare what the composer wrote down, especially if the composers are not living anymore. Yeah? You cannot communicate with him. So that's the way, even for me. Yes. So I can write down some scores. For example, now I write down solo piece for flute. For Slovakian, the flute is Lucia Pinterová, and I communicate with her because there are special kind of techniques of breathing. The piece is called Breathing by the Epicenter, and it's inspired by 7 chakra of our human being, and I call it how to breathe in your 7 chakra through the Kundalini energy, and the different kind of breathing. I ask her. It's the better to communicate with her as with the first interpret, and then I can write it down to the score. Then I can record, and then it's a challenge for another interpret, like Mikuláš Chadima in Prague, who also want to play this piece. Thank you once more.
I actually have another question, and it's basically about the title. I mean, transparent sculptures, and how that is, or maybe the question is if it is in any way connected to this idea about music as or not about music, but about actually architecture as being frozen music, like or maybe frozen music, but like erstarrte Musik.
Yeah, I understand.
Although Goethe said that, for example,
I know.
I think there are like Baroque and Renaissance writers who also said something in that direction, and it was just something I thought about when I read the title and this idea about music as sculpture, and we have like architecture as this kind of, I don't know, freezed music.
Thank you for these comments, because I was occupied also about so-called liquid intermediality. Liquid intermediality in the meanings that, let's say, opera is intermedia piece of art, Gesamtkunstwerk, Richard Wagner. Yeah, but in the postmodern era, these two groups of arts, performative arts and the arts with a fixed textuality, it's clear that in postmodern era, these different artist media trying to borrow the qualities. Again, let's say fine arts, sculpture. It's an art of fixed textuality. The reading the literature, the music, it goes by in a time, temporal, linear way. This opposite in this way is a kind of textuality. But in the liquid intermedia pieces, we deal with the postmodern work of art where we cannot be sure if the fine art which is moving due to new technology is starting to be more theatrical, going in a linear way. On the other side, the music which is stable. Yes, minimal music. Not only repeating some music like minimal, but let's say La Montaigne. It sounds just two tones for half an hour. Nothing happening. It's absolute minimalism. It's kind of like stable. But since the idea of Marcel Duchamp, who said the sonic environment where we are involved in and surrounded, as you, as me, right in the situation, we can comprehend as a sculpture, as a sonic sculpture. It's different approach. So then I can say that I can combine the idea of music and the sculpture in the same work of art, which are inspired and opening the way of interpretation. I cannot hear you by now. I don't know why. Oh, it's I can.
Okay.
Now it's okay.
Yes, thank you. I think it's like a little bit clearer now. And maybe if there are no other questions, one last question, it's about the titles of your compositions and like the picture you talked about in the end with these hands.
Yeah.
And yes, I just wanted to ask, because I really like all the titles, like this Rane na voda and also the water for the purgatory. And I thought, I'm not sure if I may be mistaken, but I think it's like in Raphael's School of Athens, he did the hands are like they are on purpose. So it's like Plato is pointing upwards to the metaphysical world, and Aristotle is like keeping it on the earth somehow. And I was just thinking about, like, because when I read the title of the title of the last piece, Water for the Purgatory, I thought it's like I immediately imagined some, I don't know, like Renaissance writer who's arguing on how we should comprehend the purgatory as this kind of
Okay, by the way, if I can interrupt you, the picture which is connected with this composition is this one. It's the Tears of Wales. It's a picture on transparent texture by my daughter Johanka. She is just 8 years old, and in the booklet is by this composition. I present you the cover of the whole album with this last piece. But so maybe it was confusing. Thanks for this comment. But what reminds me this time that this philosopher gestures is kind of in semiotic wave, in semantic ways, like sculpting the thoughts. This is the sculpting of idea of transcendence, and this is the sculpting of the idea that this world has value as well. So, you know, when sculptor is creating his sculpture, what he's doing? He's moving his hands on some material. And what is the material for philosophers? Thoughts. And what is expressing the principle of the philosophy? Gestures during the communication. So maybe that's the reason why I use this gesture of philosopher. It's like sculpting the idea, sculpting the philosophical thoughts. Thank you very much for these comments. Now I realize why I use these covers as it was made.
Excellent. I'm glad that we came to this conclusion. Sometimes with the debate and with more opinion and more question and etc. But really, if there is some last comment or question, I will be glad to hear it. If not, then I can just tell really thanks oder danke, dass Sie kommen. Natürlich, das wird auch in Audiorekord oder Video-Audio-Rekord, natürlich. Wir haben das gemacht, Video. Ich möchte auch I want to thank you, or ďakujem veľmi pekne, pán profesor, že ste tu boli, že ste nám umožnili, dann wir haben Möglichkeit zu hören, Produktion die letzte, von letztes Jahren. Und natürlich meine Kurzfrage oder my short question, what's your next project that you are working on really shortly, that we will be maybe introduced, that we will maybe know where we can find you?
My next project, you mean artistic one or scientific?
Because we are touching with artistic, so I will stay by art.
Okay, but in the old ancient Greek paradigm, it was connected.
Yes,
what even Edgar Varese said, Aristotle, as I know, maybe I'm wrong, but he wrote a poem as well. I mentioned this solo piece for flute, which remains also Edgar Varese density 21.5. I also would like to continue some cooperation with local musicians, experimental one, drummer Martin Kukučka, singer Lenka Galisova, etc. With new group. And when my art is connected with semiotics and aesthetics, I will write in cooperation with my colleague Lubomir Pavelka the book called Other Musical Discourses. Other musical discourses about my approaches with explanations of my poetics and examples of my music as well.
Thank you very much. We know what you are planning as in this field of the art. And I hope so that you will send us your new album that we will have at our institute so we can hear it. Thank you very much. I will end this concert of acousmatic music with your commenting. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the lecture through the day and now through this evening. It was really a pleasure to hear that. And I'm glad that we have also audience, but not too big. And I hope so that we will welcome you at the Institute or in Köln. So I hope so that it will finally happen, that we will see you live here, maybe with a new album, or maybe with a new project, or maybe with a new lecture, because your field of the research is really huge. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks you. I'm very pleased and honored. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Ďakujem. So see you next time, hope in person.
Ďakujeme. Majte sa. Dovidenia.
Dovidenia. Stay in contact.
OK, áno. Dovidenia.